English. 1 year before the Italian fight, Germans, French, Spaniards for the fort, the schoolhouse of the Commonwealth shall fall, where, except few, they shall be suffocated, and dead. Not. It seemeth there should be a battle between the Italians, Germans, French, Spaniards for a fort, which I suspect to have been that of Cerezoles, wherein all those nations were engaged, and that 1 year before that battle, the public house of a commonwealth should fall, and kill abundance of people, but of this I could find nothing in history. English. A little while after, without any great distance of time, by sea and land shall a great tumult be made. The sea fight shall be much greater, fire and beasts which shall make greater insult. Not. This hath a relation to a foregoing stanza, and likewise is not hard to be understood. English. The great star shall burn for the space of 7 days, a cloud shall make 2 suns appear, the big mastiff shall howl all night, when the great Pope shall change his count-ray. Not. The meaning of this is, that those 3 prodigies, contained in the first 3 verses, shall appear when a pope changeth his count-ray. English. A cock, dogs, and cats shall be fed with blood, and with the wound of the tyrant found dead, in the bed of another, with legs and arms broken, who could not die before by a cruel death. Not. These words signify, that a great man or tyrant shall be found dead in another man's bed, having his legs and arms broken, the body of which shall be devoured by these 3 kinds of creatures, a cock, a dog, and a cat. The last verse signifieth that this tyrant had escaped a cruel death. English. During the hairy apparent star, the 3 great princes shall be made enemies, struck from heaven, peace, quaking earth, Arn, Tiber, full of surges, serpent cast upon the shore. Not. In the year 1556. Upon the first day of March appeared a blazing star which lasted 3 months, and in that year the 3 great princes were made enemies, viz. Paul IV, Pope Henry II, King of France, and Philip II. King of Spain, about the breaking of the truce by Henry II. The affairs not succeeding according to the Pope's, and the King of France's desire, they made peace with the Spaniard the 14th of October, 1557. And because it was an effect of God's providence, which moved the Pope's, and the King's hearts, the author saith, they were struck from heaven. After this peace the author mentions an earthquake, which is very likely considering the overflowing of the Tiber, which followed immediately. The night after, that peace was proclaimed at Rome, on a Tuesday the Tiber did so overflow his banks, that the inundation was thought the greatest that ever was, yea greater than that which happened in the year 1530. Under Clement VII. There were 10 or 12 mills carried away, all the vineyards along the Tiber, from Pontemole to St. Peter's Church, were buried under the sands that the water carried. Abundance of houses fell to the ground. In Rome many gardens and houses of pleasure were destroyed, the loss of the wines, hay, wood, and corn could not be valued. In Florence the river of Arno did more mischief than the Tiber at Rome. The history of the genealogy of the house of Medicis, made by Peter de Boissat, mentioneth, that in some places of the city of Florence, the water overflowed to the height of 8 fathoms, and covered all the valley of Arno. The damage was yet greater at Empoli, a town in Tuscany, where, of 3,000 people, there escaped but 18. But to return to Tiber, its waters being retired into their channel, left so much mud, where it had overflowed, that no body could walk upon it, and upon that mud near the Tiber was a serpent seen of a prodigious bigness, which was killed by the count-ray people. This is the author's meaning in the last verse, Arn, Tiber, full of surges, serpent cast upon the shore. In the 3rd verse he saith, those 3 princes were struck or moved from heaven to make peace, that is, from God, every one considering that this war was only for their mutual destruction. The vulgar impression putteth in the 4th verse, Pau, Tiber, instead of Arn, Tiber, which is a visible fault, for the history mentioneth only the inundation of those 2 rivers in Italy. It may be that the likeness of those words, Pau and Arn, is the cause of the mistake, as also because the name of Pau, which is the biggest river in Italy, is more famous in history than that of Arn, which is the river that passeth through Florence. English. The eagle flying among the tents, by other birds shall be driven away, when noise of cymbals, trumpets, and bells, shall render the sense to the lady that was without it. Not. It is an eagle driven from the tents by other birds, when a mad lady shall recover her senses by the noise of cymbals, trumpets, and bells. English. The heaven bemoaneth too much the androgen born, near heaven humane blood shall be spilt, by death too late a great people shall be refreshed, late and soon cometh the succours expected. Not. Androgen is one that is male and female, from the Greek word nuaitero, which signifieth a male, and gamma which signifieth a female. The meaning then of the first verse is, that some great persons, suppose a king and queen, which he calleth heaven, by reason of their exaltation above the common sort of people, shall bemoan too long one of their children, that was, or shall be born male and female. The second verse is easy to be understood, if you take heaven in the same sense that we have said. The last two verses are plain. English. After a great humane change, another greater is nigh at hand. The great motor reneweth the ages, rain, blood, milk, famine, sword, plague. In the heaven shall be seen a running fire with long sparks. Not. Troche in Greek is a pulley, the meaning therefore of the author, that after a great mutation, God shall renew the ages, and according to his promise shall create a new heaven, and a new earth. By those prodigies related in the two last verses, it seemeth the author intendeth to speak of the last day, and of the forerunners of it. English. The great and old enemy grieveth, dieth by poison, an infinite number of sovereigns conquered, it shall rain stones, they shall hide under rocks, in vain shall death allege articles. Not. This hath a relation to the foregoing stanza, and is as it were the second part of it. For as the foremost speaketh of the last day, so doth this of doomsday. First, he saith that the great and old enemy grieveth and dieth by poison, that's the devil who shall be cast into a lake of fire and brimstone. The second verse signifieth, that all the kings of the earth shall be subdued by him that is Lord of lords and King of kings. The third verse expresseth, the anguish of the reprobate, when they shall cry to the rocks, hide us, and to the mountains, fall upon us. And the fourth verse saith, that death shall allege in vain, the articles she made with the devil and his angels. English. The great army that shall pass over the mountains, Saturn, Aries, Mars, turning to the fishes, poisons hidden in sheep's heads, their captain hanged with a thread of pole Mars. Not. Paradin relateth in his history, that after the Duke of Alba had relieved Vulpian with victuals, which was done from the 22 of July to the 1st of August, a captain of the emperor's army named La Trinite went out of Valfrenières the same first day of August, to plunder the Count Ray of Piedmont. He had 400 horses, and 500 foot. The news being brought to the Marshal of Brissac, he sent out a great number of horses, who did utterly destroy their foot, so that but 30 escaped, to carry the news to Valfrenières. The Spanish horse, seeing the French in such a fury, ran away, and got some to Ast, some to Alexandria. After that, the Spaniards, seeking to revenge themselves, took a castle 3 miles from Cazal, called Frezin, or Frasinet du Pau, where they hanged up the captain, put to the sword all the Italians, and sent all the French to the galleys. This proceeding being not according to the laws of arms, we may believe that the victorious discovered a malicious craft of the vanquished, who had left some sheep's heads poisoned, to revenge themselves of the victorious, which obliged the Spaniards to serve so the captain, the Italians and the French, and because the French were not so ill-used as the Italians, we may judge that the Italians were the chief contrivers of this business. Therefore the author, foreseeing this, saith, that the great army of the French, which shall go over the mountains, shall come to this mischief, because of the poison that was hidden in the sheep's heads. The vulgar impression erreth much in putting salmons, for muttons, for everybody knoweth that the salmons do not come into the mountains of Montserrat, and that in the month of August it is not a meat fit for soldiers, therefore instead of salmons, we have put muttons, or sheep. The captain was hanged with a thread of pole Mars, that is, with a match, of which, I am persuaded, that one certain pole Mars was the inventor. The author saith in the second verse, that the time when this accident happened, was, when Saturn was in Aries. The vulgar impression putteth are instead of Aries, but that's false, therefore set down Aries. Saturn was in that sign in the year 1555. From the 20th of February to the 14th of July, where from the 12th degree and 4 minutes, he began to retrograde in the same sign of Aries, till the 18th of November, so that Saturn was almost all that year in Aries. He saith also that Mars was going back to Pisces, because in that same year, Mars that was gone out of the sign of Pisces from the 19th of March, 1554, was retrograding to come back again into it upon the 20th of January, 1556. Thus the author meaneth, that this accident should happen in the year that Saturn should be in Aries, and Mars should be near the sign of Pisces. And to say truth, in the month of August, Mars was in the sign of Scorpio. Upon the 23rd of September, he entreed into that of Sagittarius, the 3rd of November, into that of Capricornus, the 12th of December into that of Aquarius, and the year following, viz. 1556, into that of Pisces, so that Mars was returning into Pisces, which is the end of its particular motion. By this astrological and historical discourse we correct the vulgar impression, which putteth turning from Pisces, Mars, instead of which, we put, turning to Pisces, Mars, which we do by changing only from, into to, and sheweth us how careful we ought to be in the explication of these stanzas, when the time is prefixed to us by astronomical calculations. The author's phrase doth confirm us in this correction, when he useth this word turning, which signifieth the motion that tendeth towards its end, and not the motion that cometh from its end. English. The advisers of the first monopoly, the conquerors seduced by the Melite, Rhodes, Byzance, for exposing their pole, the ground shall fail the followers of runaways. Not. All the difficulty of this lieth in the signification of the word pole, which in Greek signifieth a city. The word monopoly is vulgar, and signifieth when one or few would engross all the trade of a town. The rest is so obscure, that I had rather leave it to the liberty of the reader, than break my brains about it, considering chiefly that I am going to bed, the precedent stanza having exhausted all my spirits, and so farewell till tomorrow. English. When these of Hainault, of Gand, and of Bruxelles, shall see the siege laid before Langres, behind their sides shall be cruel wars, the old wound shall be worse than enemies. Not. Hainault is a province of the Low Countries, and Gand the chief town in Flanders, and Bruxelles the chief town of the Dukedom of Brabant. Langres is a city in France, in the province of Champagne, which is called the Maiden Town, because it was never besieged. The rest is easy. English. The blood of the just shall be wanting in London, burnt by fire of 23, the 6th, the Antaian dame shall fall from her high place, of the same sect many shall be killed. Not. Leaving unto the impartial reader his liberty to judge of this prophecy, we for our part understand by it the impious and execrable murder, committed upon the person of our last most gracious sovereign King Charles I of blessed memory, to whose expiation it seemeth our author attributeth the conflagration of London. By that proportion of 23, the 6th, is to be understood the number of houses and buildings that were burnt, which is about the proportion of 3 and 4, and cometh near to the computation, as also by that 3/20 and 6, may be understood the year 66. By the Antaian dame that shall fall from the high place, is understood the Cathedral Church of St. Paul, which in the time of paganism was dedicated to Diana, meant here by the title of an Antaian dame. The fall from her high place hath relation both to the sumptuousness and height of her building, as also to her situation, which is in the most eminent place of the city. By this verse, of the same sect many shall be killed, is signified the great number of other churches, even the number of 87, which he intimateth here by the name of the same sect, that should be involved in the same woeful conflagration. English. During many nights the earth shall quake, about the spring 2 great earthquakes shall follow one another, Corinth, Ephesus shall swim in the 2 seas, war shall be moved by 2 great wrestlers. Not. Corinth is a city of Grecia and Ephesus one of Asia, the rest is plain. English. The great plague of the maritime city shall not cease till the death be revenged of the just blood by price condemned without crime, of the great dame not feignedly abused. Not. This is a confirmation of the Eli stanza and foretelleth the great plague we have had here in the year 1665. which he saith shall not cease till the death of the just blood, meaning King Charles the I, to be avenged, who was, as is here expressed, condemned without crime, and sold for a price. By the great dame unfeignedly abused, he meaneth the sumptuous cathedral of St. Paul, which was polluted and made a stable by those profane wretches. English. By a strange people and remote nation, the great city near the water shall be much troubled, the girl without great difference for a portion, shall take the captain, the lock having not been picked. Not. In the explication of this mystical stanza, I believe every body may be as wise as I English. In the fight, the great one who is but little worth, at his last endeavor, shall do a wonderful thing. While Audrea shall see what was wanting, in the banquet he shall stab the proud one. Not. This is concerning some eminent person, who having shewed no great valor in a battle, shall nevertheless in a banquet be so bold as to stab a person of quality, that was proud. This accident must happen somewhere about Venice, because he saith that Audrea, which is taken for Venice, shall look on. English. He whom neither plague nor sword could destroy shall die in the rain, being stricken with thunder. The abbot shall die when he shall see ruined those in the shipwreck, striving to catch hold of the rock. Not. There is two accidents contained in this stanza. The first is in the two first verses, where he saith that some considerable person, who had escaped the sword and the plague, shall be strucken by the thunder, and die in a great shower of rain. The second is, in the two last verses, where he saith, an abbot shall perish by shipwreck, thinking to save himself by holding the rock. English. Before the battle the great one shall fall, the great one to death too sudden and bewailed, one shall be born half perfect, the most part shall swim, near the river the earth shall be dyed with blood. Not. The words are plain enough, but of the sense every one may think what he pleaseth. English. Without foot or hand, sharp and strong tooth, by a globe, in the middle of the port, and the firstborn, near the gate shall be transported by a traitor, Selene shineth, the little great one carried away. Not. The sense of the whole is this, that an infant begot by some person of quality shall be exposed in the night time, the moon shining, which he calleth Selene, from the Greek word sigma epsilon lambda nueta, which signifieth the moon. English. The French fleet, by the help of the great guard, of great Neptune and his tridentary soldiers, shall gnaw Provence by keeping great company. Besides, Mars shall plague Narbonne by javelins and darts. Not. Here be two things designed in this stanza. One is concerning Provence, which shall be eaten up by soldiers, and the other concerning the city of Narbonne, which shall be besieged, or the citizens fall out among themselves. English. The Punic faith broken in the east, great Jed, and Rosen, Loire, and Tag, shall be changed, when the mule's hunger shall be satisfied, the fleet scattered, blood and bodies shall swim. Not. The Punic faith, in Latine Punica fides, a false faith, was so called from the Carthaginians, called in Latine Puni, which was an unfaithful nation. I do not know what he meaneth by great Jed. As for Rosen, Loire, and Tag, they are three rivers, the two first in France, the last is the river of Lisbon called in Latine Tagus. The rest is easy. English. Agen, Tenians, Gironda and Rochelle, O Trojan blood, death is at the harbor of the Arrow, beyond the river the ladder shall be raised against the fort, points, fire, great murder upon the breach. Not. Agen and Tenians are two towns in Gascony. Gironda is a river that passeth in that country. The sense therefore of the whole is, that there shall be great wars, and fightings in those towns, as also upon that river, which happened in the time of the civil wars in France, as everybody may read in the annals, and also in the commentaries of the Lord of Monluc. English. Mabus shall come, and soon after shall die, of people and beasts shall be in horrible destruction, then on a sudden the vengeance shall be seen, blood, hand, thirst, famine, when the comet shall run. Not. Here is nothing hard, but who should be this Mabus? At last I found by transposition of letters that he meaneth Ambus, which was the name of the headsman that beheaded the Duke of Montmorency at Thilaus. How miraculous therefore appeareth our author, who did not only foretell general things, but also particular accidents, even the names of the persons that were to be born 100 years after. English. The French shall a little subdue Auzon, Pau, Marne, and Seine shall make Permeliuri, which shall raise a great wall against them. From the less to the wall the great one shall lose his life. Anat. Auzon is always taken by the author for the city of Bordeaux, because Ausonius, a famous Latine poet, was born there. The rest is so obscure, and the text so corrupted, that I had rather leave it to the liberty of the reader, than to become ridiculous, by not acknowledging my ignorance. English. Those of Geneva shall be dried up with hunger and thirst, a near hope shall come when they shall be fainting, the Jebena law shall be upon a quaking point, the navy shall not be capable to come into the port. Anat. Here you must observe that Jebena in Latine signifieth Geneva, and therefore this whole stanza is concerning the city of Geneva. English. The park inclineth to great calamity, which shall be through Hesperia and Insubria, the fire in the ship, plague, and captivity, Mercury in Aries, Saturn shall wither. Anat. Though the words be plain, nevertheless the sense is very obscure, and chiefly, as I suppose, by the faults of the impression. All what I can tell you here is, that Hesperia in Latine is Spain, and Insubria is Savoy. English. The prisoner escaped through great danger, a little while after shall become great, his fortune being changed, in the palace the people shall be caught, and by a good sign the city shall be besieged. Anat. All this is plain, both in the words and the sense. English. The fair one shall fight with the forked nose, in duel, and expel him out, he shall re-establish the banished, putting the stronger of them in maritime places. Anat. Both the sense and the words are plain. English. The endeavours of the north shall be great, upon the ocean the gate shall be open, the kingdom in the island shall be re-established, London shall quake, for fear of sails discovered. Anat. This is a very remarkable one, which hath been fulfilled since the happy restoration of His Sacred Majesty King Charles II. Now reigning, for the endeavours of the north, viz. The Dutch, have been very great. The ocean, like a gate, hath been opened to all kind of armies, to play their pranks upon. His Majesty and kingdom have been happily restored.